Hello, my name is Noel Warford, and today I'll be presenting strategies and perceived risks of sending sensitive documents. Before I start, I'd like to thank my colleagues at the George Washington University Usable Security Lab, Collins Munyendo and Adam Aviv, as well as Ashna Mediratta and Michelle Mazurek here at the University of Maryland. Imagine you have to send a document that contains sensitive information, like your social security number, to a person you do not necessarily know, like a new doctor or a CPA. How might you do this? You could send them an email, you could use an online form or portal of some kind, or you might upload it to a document sharing service that you both can access. When we consult the literature, it turns out that this is an understudied task. Now, there has, of course, been lots of great work on end-to-end encrypted communication. The classic 1999 paper, Why Johnny Can't Decrypt, studied sending secrets via email attachment with PGP 5.0. But modern work tends to focus on the direct messaging use case, which emphasizes protecting message content over attachments. In particular, how and when people use services like Signal as compared to sending via SMS. This is not usually how people communicate in a scenario when they need to send a sensitive document to a new recipient. That leaves us with a big question, though. How do people send sensitive documents? Since we don't know much about this specific task, we broke it down as follows. First, what methods do people choose when sending sensitive information and why? Second, are participants satisfied with their current approaches, particularly in terms of whether they offer sufficient privacy, and why is that the case? And finally, what risks are people most concerned about when sending this sensitive information? To investigate this use case, we ran two surveys. Survey 1 was an open-ended survey with 60 participants designed to simply find out the span of what people were doing to solve this problem and develop hypotheses to inform Survey 2, a closed answer survey with 250 participants designed to evaluate the hypotheses we developed from Survey 1. Survey 1 was organized by scenarios wherein participants would need to send sensitive documents, taken both from prior literature and our anecdotal experiences. Each participant was asked questions about 3 transmission scenarios. A scenario comprised of 2 parts: a brief description of what the participant was sending and to whom, here mortgage documents to a bank, and a list of documents the recipient required. After participants were randomly assigned 3 scenarios, for each one we asked them, had they experienced this scenario before? What method did they use if they had, or imagine using if they hadn't? How satisfied with the privacy and convenience of their described method were they and why? And what risks were they concerned about? In Survey 1, we collected primarily qualitative data, so we used open coding to identify themes in participant responses, which would later inform our closed item questions for Survey 2. In Survey 1, we learned that the most common methods people used when unprompted were taking the documents in person, sending them via email, and using an online form or portal of some kind. The least common methods reported were physical mail and using a document sharing service. We also asked participants to rate general satisfaction with the privacy of their method, and their satisfaction with the convenience of their method. As the blue parts of the bars indicate, participants were in general overwhelmingly satisfied with their methods. Each scenario instance here represents one of the 3 scenarios with which participants were presented. We asked participants to explain why they were satisfied with the privacy of their method and came away with 3 main reasons for satisfaction. Their chosen method was inherently secure. I feel like this is a very secure way to provide documents. The recipient's procedures and practices will protect their data. I would assume that my taxes are handled with the utmost security and privacy. And then finally, the data will be received by the recipient. The intended person will get the information that they sent. I would know that the sensitive information is going directly to the people who need it, so I wouldn't have to second guess it. Some participants were dissatisfied, and we found 2 main reasons for this. First, the chosen method is inherently insecure. I am not satisfied with the security or privacy of sending this information over email. I understand that it could be easily accessible by others. The recipient also might accidentally disclose their data. It just seems like a lot of information for a school to have, and I don't know how secure their system is. When asked what risks were associated with their chosen method, some participants reported the following. A facility or institution misplacing, losing, or selling my information to a third party can be worrisome. How the place I give these documents stores or disposes of them. Not knowing if the information will be kept safe. These share one common theme. The data at rest is itself at risk. This appeared far more in the responses than any indication of data being at risk in transit, which was a very surprising result for us, especially since most existing tools in the encrypted communication space are more concerned with the security of data in transit. Survey 1 left us with some pressing open questions. Have participants heard of the methods that were reported less frequently, or were they genuinely unknown? What factors were associated with more or less privacy satisfaction? And what was going on with this concept of the data being at risk at its destination? Additionally, we were able to conduct this survey with 250 participants, which let us increase the robustness and validity of our results. To answer these questions, we ran a second survey. Survey 2 was organized by the transmission methods participants had successfully used at least once before. They were assigned one such method each. These 8 methods were derived from the open coding of Survey 1's responses. In Survey 2, we used a combination of qualitative and quantitative analysis so that we could report on the prevalence of different methods, recipients, and rates of privacy satisfaction, as well as perform a regression to determine what factors might increase or decrease privacy satisfaction. We also had a few free responses that required open coding. Survey 1, as a reminder, was scenario-based, but Survey 2 was different in the following ways. At the start of the survey, participants were asked which methods they had used to accomplish this task before, and then randomly assigned one method that they had successfully used. With that method in mind, they were then asked, what were they sending and to whom, in order to gain contextual information about their scenario and to focus their answers for the rest of the survey. Then, like Survey 1, we asked them to rate their privacy and convenience of their assigned method and what risks they were concerned about. So, in Survey 2, what methods did people use? The blue bars here indicate that taking the documents in person, using an online form, or simply sending them via email were still the most common methods. Document sharing using a fax machine or sending via direct message were the least common methods. These dark orange bars, which represent I am not aware of the method of sending, indicate that participants are in fact familiar with all of the methods provided, answering an important question from Survey 1. We also asked questions about the context for the methods participants were being asked about, since we did not provide transmission scenarios in Survey 2. We found that recipients were usually official, like banks, schools, and governments. We found that those recipients usually dictated the methods rather than the participants themselves. And they also mostly indicated that participants were sending financial or identity-related documents. Further details on all of these can be found in the paper. In general, people were highly satisfied with all of the methods presented, with some slight variations shown by the blue bars here. This aligns with the high satisfaction we saw in Survey 1. We also ran an ordinal logistic regression to see which factors were most associated with greater or lesser satisfaction with the privacy of the participants' methods. The following factors were associated with more dissatisfaction with privacy. Email, fax, phone calls, and physical mail were all more likely to be associated with privacy dissatisfaction in comparison to in-person. We chose in-person transmission as a baseline because it is the only method that does not require communications infrastructure. We also found that if there was perceived risk at the destination, people were more dissatisfied, and when they were sending financial information, they were also more dissatisfied. The belief that the method is secure and the recipient would protect their data was unsurprisingly associated with higher satisfaction. However, so was sending social security numbers. This appears to be driven by an unusually large number of very satisfied responses when social security numbers were being sent. These findings overall match well with our results from Survey 1, which indicated that participants were most concerned about the data at its destination and generally trusted taking the documents in person over using communications infrastructure. Further details on the magnitudes of these various factors can be found in the paper. Identity theft and financial harm were the most prevalent risks as indicated by these orange bars. This aligns with the fact that financial and identity information were most commonly sent. Participants were also still concerned with whether or not the recipient would receive the documents, much like Survey 1. Participants were also overwhelmingly confident that they were not the major source of risk in these transactions. There is, however, no difference between participant perceptions of data being at risk at the destination versus in transit when prompted for both of those options, which is an interesting distinction from Survey 1, where unprompted participants mostly identify the risk being at the destination. To sum it up, we ran 2 surveys to identify how and why participants sent sensitive documents and their perceptions of privacy and risk when doing so. We found that participants primarily use email, online forms, or take the documents in person, but they are aware of other methods to accomplish this. We also learned that participants are concerned about the data when it arrives at the destination, especially when unprompted. I would also like to thank our partners at the Department of Defense for funding this work, and to you all for watching and attending this talk. Thanks very much.